And hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me now. And I'll go to the comments. And we're going to go live tonight and do as much as we can as long as the video holds out and the audio. I'm Thomas Gasior. I'm your co-host. And I'm going to bring up my other co-host right now. There's Mr. Ken Zieska. Say hello to everyone, Ken.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Great.
And we're coming to you from the western suburbs of Minneapolis. We are in the house of Joe Binish. We're going to see the central of Minnesota. He's got one of his great operators here. Isn't that true? Oh, he couldn't show up. Oh, we got Matt. Okay. I'm sorry. We got Matt. One of the good guys couldn't show. So, hopefully we'll survive this without too many technical meltdowns. We have some backups in place. But what you're going to see tonight is basically a train arrive in the yard, Joe, be blocked, be switched out, and then go do a job on his 3rd Street alley. And we'll go set that up and we'll talk to Joe, and I'm gonna let Ken take over here, and I'll be right back with you guys.
Somebody was saying they couldn't find our YouTube channel. It's on TCD NMRA Media. So I hope you find it there. But if you're checked in, I would think you're probably pretty good. One of the things, I'll give you a little overview and perhaps they'll give you some of that. But Joe is modeling the downtown Minneapolis area, or just generally Minneapolis area, in the late 50s. He's got what he calls middle yard, and the Emmett St. L had that yard right downtown, just on the just near south side of Minneapolis, not far from the Minneapolis depot. They had a famous area there called the Trench, where one side was Great Northern, the other side was the Emmett St. L. And then they went further south until they got out by the lakes, which was another yard, and then they headed south and west. So a lot of activity came out of middle yard, and Joe has bent the geography just a little bit. And so from this middle yard, he goes out and he works the downtown Minneapolis canyons, and that's where the tall buildings, of course, are on either side, and you work the alleys in between. Again, it's just a marvelous operating idea. It was really neat and historic. Then he goes up north. He'll go to interchange spots. He's got a twin seat hoist up there. Then he goes northeast and Lake Street, again, kind of taking advantage of the geography bender, to just some wonderful operating areas. And on either end, he has storage, so he'll have trains come through from time to time. So if you're operating, you're in yard limits, but you still have to get out of the way when the crack Central of Minnesota passenger trains come through, or some of the other trains that just pass through. Again, this is right downtown Minneapolis. Everything constrained through this little canyon. So there was a lot of operation there. So I hope you're going to enjoy it. And yes, Joe did show up, but Joe rarely operates his own layout. So when he talked about having one of the better operators there, he's talking about somebody that really operates. So pay some particular attention as you go by, if you can, to the equipment that you see on Joe's layout. Most of it is custom painted, and his box cars, all his freight cars, typically are.
There we go.
There we go.
Add the right one to the stream. Okay, we're ready to go to Joe here.
Could you put some light on Joe's face? Oh, never mind. No, on second thought, forget it.
Rather not.
There we go.
All right, we're ready to go. So this is the transfer north. So it comes from the north yard in maybe past Shoreham. I'm not exactly sure where it is. But in order to get it rolling, we're going to throw the signal here. And it went yellow, so we can head to the middle yard.
You can see the alleys here. That's 3rd and 4th Street.
I'll stop down at the end of the yard. Jump out and talk to the yard master in the call box here. Yard master Matt.
Yeah.
Transfer West is here from the North Yard. Can I come in?
Yeah, sure. Coming on 81.
All right, rolling.
So Tom seems to have lost his audio. But as you can see, the transfer came in, stopped at the end of the yard, got permission to go into the yard. He got in. That's his engine card. Now he's looking at car cards. And those are all going to 3rd Street.
How's this? Does I sound better?
You sound better now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So these are all going to 3rd Street.
So the operative part is the reporting marks, the number for the car, where it's going to go, and then on this card system where the job is that it's going to get sent out on. And for today's purposes, we're really interested in 3rd Street switch cars. So we'll give this to the yard master.
Hang on to this for a second. I'm going to go activate that camera.
So we pull our locomotive up there, clear. Matt's got some work to do. He's going to give us all the Transfer West cars.
Did everything. All right. So what I'm going to do is get the caboose and move it forward. Get the cars and move them over.
So there's an overview of the yard, and we'll watch him switch for a while. Thank you, Joe. Maybe he can point out what he's doing.
Yeah.
So he's cutting the caboose off here. So I'm leaving the caboose so that we can, I can take it with me when I go north. Or west, I'm sorry, go west. Important when you're out in an operating session not to take the cars home. Several times I've gotten packets from people in the mail.
All right, now we got ready to go, and he can depart on to his next route, and I'll sit here and get the 3rd Street cars that came in onto the 3rd Street alley.
Thanks, Yardmaster.
So is he going to switch for a bit, and you're going to want to explain your yard?
Yep, sure.
Okay. And we got some questions coming in already, Joe.
Nice.
So as soon as you get that put away,
Okay.
you can go over there. You got some Ken there for him, or
Asking about the Armstrong levers, Tom.
the Armstrong levers is what they want to know.
Hump yard purveyance. Hump yard purveyance.
I just checked this out, and yes, Hump Yard Purveyance is out of business. Sorry about that.
It's a good time. Maybe it's a good time to 3D print one.
Tommy Tech Armstrong levers. I'll look at it.
In this now, and it did about held about 75 cars, and we can get a little bit more than that in there now.
Matt, what are you doing back there?
Yeah, so this is like the yard office box. So like depending on like where the cars are going to, I am basically looking at where I have the blocks on each track, and I just try to match up where they're going to. So like this next one, I'll put it on like the reefer track, which is kind of over there for like the produce job. And then like next one's for like the Canadian, which goes north, and then another northeast job. So kind of take a look at everything here and kind of see where the car is, because as trains come in, you look at which train's coming in, you grab that cut of cars, put them out on either 80, bring the train in, get them swapped out, and get them back on the road as efficient as possible.
All right, Joe, how big is your layout?
This big?
This big, yeah.
It's about 10 feet wide here and 20 feet wide from end to this wall here, and then maybe another 20 feet down to the end there. And then on the right side, we have northeast and another staging. The Lake Street area is here around the corner under the steps. And then you can see under the big black worm there, it goes off into east staging. So there are 3 staging yards and 5 switching areas. And then my crew, there's usually one guy who has to run the through transfers and the through trains.
Okay, very cool, very cool. And what is he switching with today?
That's the D139s and his an NW2. And the M&L is kind of weird. When they started getting switched or diesel locomotives, they put a D in front of the number, but it's silent, but it's still on there. When they got road engines, they didn't do that. But,
DCC? Who makes that?
It's Digitrax. That is a Kato NW2. So I had to. They're split like an N-scale locomotive. The frame is, so you have to route out to get the decoder in there, and that one is an ancient decoder, so it needs to be replaced. But I'm too cheap to do it.
And of course, one of the techniques I was doing there is delaying the coupler, which is always useful, especially here. You can't reach too far. So anytime when you can delay it and it works, it's a useful technique.
I try and arrange it so the cars roll away from you just far enough that they recouple.
Now you have some unique cars. Can you tell us what's that Great Northern boxcar? That doesn't look like a Athearn blue box.
Nope, that's a Westerfield resin kit that I built, I don't know, 10 years ago maybe. Anyway, they come as, nowadays they're one-piece bodies, so the box is constructed for you. This one was one that was sides and ends you had to glue together, glue the roof on, fit the underframe, and then drill a whole bunch of holes for grab irons and detail parts, that kind of thing. And that's the part of the hobby that I enjoy, is that model building.
Well, he's doing that. Could you pull out a car card?
Sure.
The one we're not using.
Yep.
And all right.
So, reporting marks, Central Minnesota, number 609. It's the flat car. It's to the rip track, which is right there in Middle Yard, Minneapolis. It's from NSP in Minneapolis, and it's empty.
What's the 2?
The 2 is its destination. That's where you want to send it, the car. That's its destination. And that's the part you care about. The rest of it you really don't care about. This part, this is just fluff. The next destination, when it's done at the rip track, it's going to go to Aaron Carlson Company in Northeast on the Northeast job. So when Matt is switching, he'll look to this spot, and if it has a colored stripe on there, then he knows it's a train that's going to go out of the yard, and I arbitrarily assign the colored stripes to whichever train I feel like. But this one is going on the Northeast, so that's a local car, so he'll switch that to one of the switch jobs. And there are 4 destinations and a 5th on the car card. When you create the car card in the program, it has you put in that information. And the 28 is just the car in sequence as I entered them into the computer program.
So show side 4 with the stripe. And
Okay,
explain
there it is. So transfer west was arbitrarily assigned the blue stripe, and that just makes it easier for the yardmaster to go through a cut of cars, or when he's sending a cut of cars out with a train, he can make sure he has all blue cars to send out.
So besides a yard master, a typical session would have how many and what would they do?
Okay, so there would be 6 total operators and myself as the superintendent. So one of them is the yard master, and he's kind of key. If he doesn't keep ahead of the game, then everybody else ends up standing around. So we have 3rd Street, which we'll switch later. That's one switch job. He switches for 2.5, 3 hours. 4th Street is the same thing. This is Clark Props just did this on Thursday, and he was busy for 3 hours straight. And there are a lot of cars in here. And unfortunately, the prototype only had the one runaround, and that's all we have here. Sometimes, if you look at all these reefers, that whole string of reefers need to be switched out, and they need to go one of these 2 tracks, or on this track, or back here. So that guy's going to be super busy next time around. So I don't know who's going to do that, but somebody's going to be really busy. Might have to bring in an extra operator.
So you mean maybe I could show up?
Well,
No.
we're going to do it during the day.
Don't push it.
And then around the corner here is Lake Street, and that guy comes caboose light from Cedar Lake Yard, which is a staging yard, comes over and does all his pickups, does his work, and then goes back to the yard and brings all his set outs. And you can see there's an off spot car here. This one's an off spot. And if you look at the box, his office, if you will, set outs are empty because I've restaged. Here's all his pickups. There's that off spot car. And then behind are all the hold cars that I don't want them to do any switching with. So they'll sit there for this next session. So when you're over to operate, when you place a car in the correct spot, you put it in the set out pile in that slot. Or if it doesn't, you can't put it in there because there are too many cars in that spot, then you put it in the off spot. And there's all the cars you need to pick up.
Very good. I like it.
So he also does all this work over here. And so there's a separate box here. But that's another job that is probably 2.5, 3 hours worth of work.
Now you'll see the signals. We have a lot of people interested in signals. And so can you throw one of these? These are all with your lever.
Well, it should be right over red. What's going on? Let me throw.
There we go. Bottom drop to yellow.
Okay, so that means that you're going to take the diverging route. This is kind of a traffic flow control, and it tells you which route you're going to take, but it's not an interlocked necessarily because I don't have detection.
No, I know this is Washington Avenue, but I think the tower earned another name, didn't it?
That's the Sampson Memorial Tower. So there's another guy on YouTube who does something about Sioux and Milwaukee Road and Great Northern. And he was over visiting, and his hoodie caught on that ground and launched the tower onto the ground. Fortunately, I fixed it.
He's quite the curmudgeon.
Yeah. And he spits a lot.
He spits a lot. So.
This is kind of cool, though, inside. I have to build the model board that shows what the interlocking looks like.
Here, they're going to rename it Gasior Tower after.
Yeah, right.
And that corresponds.
Yep. So this is essentially the model board. You can see I don't use these first 5 levers. They don't do anything. But this one throws a out, as does this one. So the ones with the white faces do. The ones with the black faces are the signals. And then each one of them should have a blue lever as the lock. But now with the blue lever thrown back, nothing will work. And that enables the system to work. So, but I didn't want to have to throw that many levers because it's a lot of work.
And for cavemen like me, there's actually instructions. Thinking that I could read.
Right.
So
Grog move on north.
grog, move iron over.
So it looks like Matt's ready, and he's put his caboose on. And since he's going to take an M&L engine, he took an M&L caboose, which we appreciate.
All right. So have him take a quick break. I'm going to go deal with Ken and see how we're doing. Ken and I, we got intermission now.
Great. Hey, Tom, here's a comment. Somebody was talking, Dan mentioned that it'd be cool to model Midway Stadium with the active tracks behind it. Now, Midway Stadium was in St. Paul, where the minor league team used to play. The Twin Stadium is over on the other side, right by where Middle Yard was. And a great deal of the industry that was down there is, of course, gone now and covered over by the where the train station is. But the line still goes down there, and you still see traffic going from east to west on the BN and the Chicago or Union Pacific now. But that is still a great area. The question came up again about how do you make those, and I think we're still talking about the switch levers. And as Joe mentioned, those are no longer being made. There was another company mentioned, and they're no longer making them either. I went and looked on Google, and both of those are gone. So,
Yeah, I'm sure somebody, can say they got working levers. Yeah, that everybody's fascinated by the levers. So we'll work on that. We'll find an answer and maybe put it in the comments when we upload this video.
Right. Yeah. I've looked a couple different places, Tom, and I've not found anyone that's currently making them, but I'll keep looking.
So any other questions that they want to see? I think these guys are
They're looking
getting
for
their drink of water.
Yeah, they're looking for an overview, walk the whole layout. I mentioned that when you go down and work the Lake Street job, you actually have, in order to work the whole job, you have to cross over the main line, and so you need to be on your toes. In like most industrial areas in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I imagine everywhere else, there was a main line that went through there. And there were class 1 trains that you had to watch out for. And so, yes, it wasn't within yard limits. So you had that so you could travel, but you still had to be aware of other people coming through.
Yes. Yeah. That's so somebody asked about the Midway Stadium.
Yeah. I think perhaps there's somebody that's been up here and remembered when you would sit at the Saints game, and then the train would go by and the announcer would go, "Train."
Yeah. When we went by that, if you didn't honk, you almost got told on. So you always had to honk at everybody.
Yeah.
Because you'd go by and it was out in left field. They had a hot tub out there. It's minor league team. They had gimmicks every inning. They had a pig bring balls out to the umpire. It was a lot of fun, but yeah. So question for you, Joe, maybe I can pass on. Is anything that Joe models still in use today? I mean, the trackage, I think the trackage is.
Not directly, because all the M&L in the Twin Cities is kind of torn up. The Twin Cities in Western uses the track through Cedar Lake and down through St. Louis Park and Hopkins.
Which is part of what you model. The alleys are gone.
Yep, the alleys are the track's still there. They're buried.
Oh, the tracks are buried. And I think the alleys were Great Northern that we stole.
Yes, right.
From that James Hill guy.
The goat people.
The goat people, as we call them here in the cities. Which is every other layout.
Yes.
Yeah, that doesn't mean greatest of all time, by the way.
No. To them it does.
Well, yeah.
It's the Great Northern. Great Northern doesn't have fans. It's a cult. So
Yes.
It's kind of like the Pennsylvania, Heath. It's kind of like those there. So yeah, we'll go do the operation on 3rd Street, not Avenue, and then we'll do a layout overview, hoping the cameras survive. And I'll probably log in with my camera and we can do that. So if you guys are ready to go,
we're ready to go.
Let me see if I'm charged up.
So while Tom is preparing that next part of this, I want to point out that Joe has been operating for quite a number of years, and now recently, the last year or two, he's really gone back and started working on his scenery. And he has some just splendid, splendid sites. And as you know, every time you work on your scenery, you have to work twice as hard to get the layout ready to operate, because scenery materials and ballast and all that really messes up a good operation. So Joe does this in groups, in bunches. He's got a group that helps him, and then we operate like crazy to get everything back online. So it's kind of neat. You get a chance to run trains, turn a wheel, which is fun, switch out cars, but there's still some nice scenery to look at.
You ready? We're ready. So what?
Okay, so Matt's going to take the 939, which is a HH 600 or 660. Watch the little switchman down here. We were having some problems with this turnout when the engine crews would leave the switch open like that. And so now I have the switchman there with his lantern. The yardmaster can look at it and say, "Oh, I can't go back there," because the yardmaster.
I got to get the camera down there to see him. Okay, there's his lantern.
The yardmaster would run through there, through the switch, and through this switch, and it would be thrown against him, and then he would derail all his cars and say mean things. So hopefully we fixed that. So now that the switch is thrown to the diverging route that the yardmaster uses, his lantern is not lit.
So he didn't want to use your mirror up here.
No, the guys weren't good with that.
We need to get lights out here for all your black diesels.
Yeah, sorry.
Can we see him well, Ken? Can you see that good enough?
We can see well. I have a question, Joe. What's the era that the diesels were black with the yellow stripes like that?
What era were the diesels with the black with the yellow stripes?
Through whenever they bought them, so 1939 through 1960, when the Northwestern took them over.
Okay.
And he is running around his train, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
At the high rate of speed here. Now that you also run passengers, correct?
I do run passenger trains, yep. We have an Emmett St. L passenger train we'll see later. I don't have the Doodlebug, sadly. And then we have the vaunted Central Minnesota passenger trains, which we'll see a couple of those. Actually, it'll just be a milk train and a mail train, but they will have coaches on. Well, one of them has a coach on it.
So the overall theme of the Central in Minnesota, I know you have up to Canada or down. What is the?
So my theory is that the Central Minnesota runs from Houston to Canada, but almost entirely on Winnipeg, Canada, almost entirely on your trackage rights. So we don't have to pay for any maintenance, because that's very expensive.
So you're a parasite.
Yes, right. And then I also, model the Emmett St. L. That's the main thing I'm trying to model.
The Minneapolis, St. Louis.
Yep. So Matt's running out of the yard now. And like a good operator, when he's done, he's going to throw the turnout to the main so that trains don't get sent into the yard.
Come over here.
Now, how wide are these alleys? I'm asking for a friend.
About that wide.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
It's there's a width, a maximum width requirement. So if you don't fit that, you have to go on a diet before you can operate on the Central Minnesota. I barely make it.
Excuse me. So Matt, he's going to have to back in here, correct?
Yep,
Right.
That's correct. So I have to stay clear of the main for any passenger trains or anything
Sure.
coming by as much as possible.
And also, if you're over 6'3", you have to wear a padded hat when you're working that alley.
Yeah, Matt needs one. If you're over 6'3",
Up the deck a little.
you have to duck. Is that the first one? People are watching. Something had to derail. Okay, we're good.
Oh, no.
So, Joe, tell us about your freight cars here. pay no attention to that guy behind the screen. So,
How about the passenger train, Tom?
well, let's do some rail fanning over here. What train is this?
We'll say it's going to Des Moines. Sadly, I don't have the doodle bug that should have, but instead I have that nice F unit. Matt, I assume you lined it for the main?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good save.
So the train to Des Moines only needs a coach today. I mean, after all, who wants to go to Des Moines?
It's limited. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
They,
Short passenger trains on the St. L.
they don't even get a diner.
Nope.
Now, who made this caboose here?
That's American. That's a laser kit. So American Model Builders or something like that. Anyway, my friend Jerry Zieska put that one together for me.
Did a nice job.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. But they're really light because they're wood, so you have to weight them down with depleted uranium.
So tell us about where everything's going to go, Joe, while he's doing it. We got a tank car, a reefer, a gondola full of something, box, another tank, reefer. Where are these things going to go?
Look at the map here.
Oh, see? Written instructions.
So that's Matt's car cards will tell him where he needs to put stuff. And if you look at this switching area, there's a couple of runarounds, but one of them is one of the industry tracks. Otherwise, you have a very short one. So he kind of has to plan his moves.
Did you build your turnouts?
I did not. My friend John Bratt made those for me. And I'm not man enough to do those, especially the three-way and the crossover. I had to wire everything, but he physically built them.
I've heard you have to be an amazing modeler to build your own switches.
Oh,
Is that true?
A psychopath.
Psychopath. Wait a minute. Yep, I think you're correct.
So the trackage arrangements with the industries and the way that the tracks are all laid out with the switches and the spurs and that kind of stuff are all taken from maps from Dave Voss many years ago, and they're prototypically accurate. I did cherry pick a few industries and move them onto the alleys, but the spacing is fairly correct, and the location of the industries and the tracks are all prototype.
So basically, Matt has his own little layout here.
Yep.
Because once he's in here and he's out of the way, no one's going to bother him. And he's not going to bother anybody.
Let's try not to.
We're trying not to. And so this would make a layout unto itself. You know, I'm talking with Heath and some other people with limited space. This is like an Uber time saver.
So Tom, what's the width and the length of the alley itself?
I don't think it's wider. I think it's 1.5 feet wide at the most.
So the
Yeah,
total
it's
peninsula is
probably 10, 12 feet long. You know, if you had a shelf in your office, you could easily switch away here. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, probably a dozen industries.
And so, but the next alley, you can't get from this alley to that alley. You've got to go out onto the main
Or
line.
the other alley. How wide are your alleys in real life? About a foot, 1.5 feet?
Yeah, so that's it. I think the whole thing is 24 inches, so that's 9. Yeah, so it's about 24 inches. What's going on, man?
People are watching.
Just kind of.
Jumped up there. Could be when it gets cold like this and dry, it shortens everything up.
Is one job better than the other, or worse, or difficult?
This is more difficult, this side, because there's only the one runaround. This side typically gets more cars. So it's a horse apiece. There's the yard down at the end called the D yard that runs perpendicular to the alleys. Has a couple of tracks where you can slough stuff if you need to, but you have to get out on the main to do that. So I tell guys to come over with about 6 cars. Matt, being a super duper operator, comes over with all of them and tries to do all the switching, and usually does very well.
All right. Well, he's switching away. Should we do a whole layout overview?
Sure.
And we'll trip over my own cord here. You want to move that chair.
Okay. Moving chair.
Moving chair. Stepping on my cord here.
I did. So this is Cedar Lake Yard or West Staging. So there are 5 tracks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Usually there are cars on this track for the freight house. And so there are 12 cars there that have to go to the freight house, and we'll see those cars later. And there's one track way in the back for the Minneapolis Industrial Railroad. And that will come out later during the session to do some switching.
Okay. So this is staging.
Yep.
And this is the west end?
Yep, correct. So the Minneapolis and St. Louis ran down to Peoria, and on the way interchange with the Santa Fe and the New York Central and the Pennsylvania and the Nickel Plate. And their main job was to get around Chicago. So they took a lot of cars from the Northern Pacific and sent them down to Peoria to get sent further east. This is another switching area, but this doesn't get switched every session. Number 16 is the American Hoist job, and this whole building is American Hoist. And there are multiple spots against the building and spots under the crane. And there are a couple of other industries. Hudson Manufacturing is here, and then there's a spur back there with no building that's NSP, and so the cars get routed there as well.
So, Tom, as you went by that window, can you tell us about that fine model that's up in the window?
We'll get to that. You know what they're asking about,
Oh.
and it has something to do with, I don't know, alcohol.
No. That was a humble spot. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, he fesses up about it, but
Yeah. So American Hoist, and it's just the cars get moved in and out of there, gondolas, flat cars. This building needs some more paint, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
So then we enter middle yard.
Yep, here we are, middle
main
yard.
line.
Yep, main line. This is the switch lead. Here's the engine track, and then the caboose track and a rip track. Sometimes caboose track also stores the snowplow. And I'm waiting for a session when we have snow so I can make the crews run the snowplow around. But in 9-10 years plus operating, it hasn't ever happened.
Someday.
So it's a little disappointing. So again, here's middle yard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 body tracks. This is the reefer track. And this is transfer 2, transfer 1, AD2, AD1, and then the main line.
What is AD?
Arrival departure.
Arrival departure.
And we talked about this a little bit, but here's the meat track, and why the produce reefer is on the meat track, I don't know. But meat reefers get spotted here. Guys drive up in their trucks and take the meat away. This is the ice track, so either the ice truck or the ice house will ice the cars. I have a clean out track here, not yet seen it.
So then this is 4th Street
4th
Alley
Street.
operations.
Yep, there's your
hotspot, car keys that tells you where you are. And then we have the map.
map important.
Map important for grog. Yeah, the one little runaround.
Yep.
And then see, here's what you can model. If the aisle, put industries in the aisle and have some fun with it. You know? And he also models. So what are the words here? So that's where coast to coast is, right?
Right. So there should be a building there. I haven't built it yet. So, and Fanny Farmer is the same thing. Somebody came back with neat handwriting and wrote them. I just scribbled them on there with Sharpie. And then
Okay,
pasted.
we've seen down there, we've seen Washington. So let's go down to your freight house.
Okay.
And once they take the Dukes of Hazzard leap,
Well, that swing's closed.
you can see the swing gate here.
So the freight
Oh,
house.
yeah. As long as my gimbal died, I might as well do this.
The freight house takes 12 cars and is switched off of the northeast section. So that's a dedicated part of his job. And if you look here, these are the destinations where the cars are going to go. So part of the job is for the operator to say, I need a car that goes to Philadelphia, and we'll send a Pennsylvania car to Philadelphia. Well, that makes perfect sense. I need a car for Baltimore. I'm an Orioles fan because my mom grew up in Baltimore, so I have a couple of Baltimore, or I have a Baltimore spot. So a Baltimore and Ohio car, well, that works out. And then we have a Boston car, and it's a Boston and Maine car. Now, I'm not that, I don't have it match exactly.
So the person who did this did a good job.
With those three, I'm not sure why this Canadian Pacific Railway car is going to Chicago, but okay, that works. Here's a Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis car also going to Chicago. All right, that's fine. It's on its way home.
So you used this map.
Yes, which has been printed in Model Railroader a couple times anyway.
And it's a zone map.
Yep. And so it tells you the railroads that are in those zones. Unfortunately, they shaded it with colors, so and when we, copy it, we get those funny grayscale. But we just have to work through that. So that's what the crew uses to decide where to send those cars.
All right, so now we're down here.
In Northeast,
Northeast switch.
another dedicated switch job.
What does this operator do?
So he's going to come in. He'll start here. You can see his car's parked here at the yard office. And that's his conductor getting on the caboose. He does that all day. There's a locomotive parked back there. And he'll start out by doing his pickups and whatever setouts he has left over, if he has some off spots. And so Grain Belt and Purina and Husted Steel, Fisk Tire, the Team Track, and Northeast Ready Mix all get switched out, and he does his pickups and then assembles those, makes sure that these three tracks are in the yard are empty. So when he comes back, because if he leaves cars here, he's going to create a problem for himself. So then he goes to the yard, drops off his cars, picks up his caboose and shoves it up here and picks up the 12 cars that were in Cedar Lake staging. So he'll pick up these 12 cars, take them back and swap them for the cars that are in the freight house. So he uses these three tracks to swap 12 cars for 12 cars. Then he'll do the sort to get them to the right destination. And then he'll take the 12 he took out back to Cedar Lake and then come with any cars that the yard has for him. So again, it's a 3-hour job. And you can also see back here is the lead for North Staging. So that's my Winnipeg destination. And there's some trains back there, nothing pointed. 7 is pointed out. And I don't know if you can see way back there, it might be too dark. That's East Staging. And I have a couple of steam locomotives parked there. And way in the back is a Rock Island sleeper that has to come out.
All righty.
Do we check on Matt?
Yeah, we'll check them at Ken. Anything else?
No, there was a little bit of extra comment about the alleys. The person that's Facebook user, and I wish I knew your name so I could call you by name, talks about including those on his layout, and I absolutely agree. I have a couple of alleys on mine, and it works great because you can see he's got that building mass down the center, and that serves to separate the two sides of the railroad. That's very effective for making the railroad seem bigger.
Show us what I see these drawers.
Okay. So loads. And that one's flat cars. And this one's reefers. Maybe a few box cars. Tank cars. And a reefer. Box cars. probably half of those are resin kits, maybe less. 1, 2, yeah, just 2 of them out of the however many. This is all my foreign road power up there. Some MCNL stuff in there too. So these are different transfers that come on. I run an 8-hour session for a whole day. So in one session, we may see the Great Northern and the Rock Island. In another session, we'll see the Milwaukee and the MN&S. And they'll come out and drop cars off in the yard and come back. And then I have some more cars. So these are, I think the next 2 are all box cars. Yep. I think this one is too.
With their car cards.
Yep, with their car cards. Yeah, that's key. And then this is all just miscellaneous open top stuff, except for that one. It's really bad when the staging ferry does not get the correct car card with the car.
And Matt, you're done?
No, not yet. I just got done with Red Owl, and I'm kind of doing these industries up here on the side, and also kind of figuring out if I want to get the boost on the other side of my training as I'm working on my pickups and.
Oh.
Yeah,
People are watching. Well, what's this over here? My, it's gondola. What are those kids?
So those are red caboose ones, I believe. Yeah. So you've got the loaded and the unloaded, and you can see this is Walther's unloader. So, and that's really how they did a lot of the deliveries of coal in these, was in these GS gondolas, either up from the river or down from Duluth. Rail fan night.
The foamers.
Yep. Look at that guy's late, so he's running like crazy.
He wanted a picture of the train to Des Moines.
Yeah, he did. It's hard up.
All right.
This oil dealer hardly has a car, but I think there's one routed there for next time.
So grab that engine shell, and we'll have confession night here. Because this is a fun story. This is a pretty layout. So put it over here in the light. And this is coming to the modeler's retreat? Is it?
Yes. Yeah, I'll show you how I'm going to fix it. No, I used to have to take my daughters to dance class on Friday afternoons, and my sons were little at the time, so everybody had to jump into the minivan. And it was during the hockey tournament, and I was painting this for my buddy Doug Complin. And the yellow you can see is nice and shiny. And so I did that on a 2-year-old Wednesday and put it in the oven on a wood stand to set the paint. It's scale coat paint, and I had it at the right temp because the yellow set beautifully, and the shell did not look like this. It looked like a H1244 from Walther's. And so I masked off the green and sprayed it and ran up quick and put it in the oven to watch the hockey game before I had to take the kids to school or to the dance class. And somewhere between Wednesday and Friday, I turned the oven up just a little bit, and between warm and 200 is where Walther's plastic lets go. So oh my gosh, look at the time. Hurry up, everybody get in the car. And I opened the oven to take this thing out, and it was like a big blob like this. And I said all the bad words I know, and the kids learned that. And I pulled it off, and it went like it looks now. So I keep it around so that I don't get too cocky when I'm doing.
So why would you put it in the oven?
Just because it sets the paint and makes it really smooth.
Is that scale coat paint?
Scale coat paint.
All right.
Yeah. It just you can do that with brass. You have to be careful though. If your wife comes home and adjusts the oven to make cookies up from 200 to 350, it will melt a brass vessel. Not my story. That's from John Brett. So this kind of everybody gets a kick out of this. I'm thinking I should throw it away maybe.
You're done now. You've told the story.
Yeah, right. It's out on the internet.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch.
Make the progress.
Ken, we got from the home front. Anything else?
Well, we're having a little conversation about alleys here on the way, and Roger Coleman is impressed by Joe's story about painting the engine. Roger's relatively new in the hobby, so people have been trying to convince him to start doing his own airbrushing. I'm sure that'll encourage him a lot.
Yeah, that would encourage all of us to airbrush with scale coat paints. But so now we see an engine with cars on both sides. And I've had people say you can't do this, and I disagree because we do it on the prototype all the time just to get things done. Well, all right. I think we'll wrap her up here, Ken. We've been going for over an hour.
So just
Anybody
a quick
wants
thing,
to see anything else?
Tom, a quick thing. Joe noted that the MNCNL got the coal. The Northern Pacific and the Milwaukee particularly would bring coal down from Duluth. The MNCNL didn't. The MNCNL got their coal from the Minneapolis docks area, and Joe has got that also well represented on his layout. And I you didn't quite note that, but can you show us that his Minneapolis docks area?
Yeah, hang on a second. I'm gonna switch cameras because that one's pretty much dead.
Okay, well, I'll tell the story just briefly. Back at the turn of the 18 to 1900s, there was a little area down at the base of the Mississippi River underneath the University of Minnesota, and it was called Boom Island. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't Boom Island, but this area was a squatter's stay. And then as the city tried to clean it up, it got turned into Minneapolis, Minneapolis docks. And that's where the MNCNL would bring barges of coal up and they would unload it. Then they had an area, they had to get up about 100 feet in a span of maybe 3/4 of a mile. And that was quite a climb. And so, but the MNCNL would take up a few cars at a time. And so you'll see here that Joe has very well represented that. So he's got a nice little dock area down in a hollow, and then he comes up the hill. You're gonna have to get. Now, see, unfortunately, both Matt and Joe went into that area. There you go. So that's where the barge traffic would come in. They'd unload the coal. Yep. Yep. Then as the 60s went on, that, of course, coal became less and less important. And so that area got cleaned out. For those of us that went to the University of Minnesota in the late 60s and early 70s, we would try to get down there and park for free. The University of Minnesota picked up on that real quickly and paved that lot and put in an expensive parking lot. Joe has done an exquisite job of that. That's the barge to rail and then rail to end user. I think Joe's magic pointer is pointing out how much distance there is between that and the main line. You see it's very well scenic there. And that grade looks obscene, but it really, the grade out of the barge terminal was very, very steep. the grain in the gondolas and the hopper cars is relatively new. Into as late as the 50s, they were still hauling coal in a lot of box cars, because when you get out into rural Minnesota, they didn't have ways of unloading the gondolas. And so the stories are many of boxcars full of coal being spotted at the local feed and fuel dealer. And the fuel dealer, starting in August, would have the high school football team come out, and the defensive linemen would all unload coal by hand into the coal docks. And that was their early summer training for football practice.
Okay, did that explain it? Can you hear me now, Ken? Did that explain it well, or?
I think so. We're looking at the houses that Joe has, and each one of those houses is built for one of Joe's children, and in each yard there's something particular to that child. The colors are all important, but really, really nicely done scenery. As we said earlier, Joe incorporates operations with really nice scenery, so it's a pleasure to go over there and operate. A lot of fun.
I can't take credit for the scenery. That's mostly Rich Ramirez and Doug Complin. So I tell them what to do, and then they build it. It's very handy. So I really like the backdrops. That really makes a huge difference, along with fascia. But it really sets the layout off. I should paint my valance, but that's not going to happen. So yeah, one of my daughters likes blue, so that's her house. One of them likes yellow, that's her house. My other son, my younger son, likes the red one. And then we have over by the freight house was the green house. That's for my other boy. So they're all above 18 now, so have their own dogs and that kind of stuff. And then these guys at the station kind of leaning there, haven't been glued down yet, but I figured I needed some fellas some businessmen going to work here.
Everybody says you got nice scenery.
Yeah, it's, again, I can't get credit for it. This is from John Bratt from his layout, and I bought it from him, so it's really nice to be able to plop down a stocked lumber yard, and that gets a lot of traffic, so that's pretty cool. This Lake Street job has all kinds of work. Again, keeps a guy busy for 3 hours or so.
So Joe doesn't mention it, but specifically, but what he's talking about when he's talking about John Brandt and Rich and all these guys, there are groups within the Twin Cities division that help each other on layouts, and so Rich may do some scenery work on Joe's layout, and Joe will do some custom painting and building for Rich. So it's a great way to share our skills in the hobby.
Look at that poor mailman getting absconded by those two dogs. This is Patrick's house, so I have to give him a hard time about his dogs. Another thing that Rich Ramirez built for me and suggested we put in is these signs, and that makes a huge difference for the crews, knowing where they're going and what the rules are and all that kind of stuff when we operate. So, and you can tell the gray ballast, which isn't finished yet, but that's the main line, so you need to keep that clear. And then the black is cinders, and so that's for siding. So, as a switch crew, you can hang out there and be fine. But we want to keep that gray ballast, the main line, clear so we can get other trains through. Let's go see what Matt's up to.
I'm checking on the D yard.
Okay, so we have the D yard here. Is those two tracks in the back. And 3rd Street and 4th Street use that for storing cars when they don't want to have all of them in the switching area with them.
All right, I'm almost done.
Yep, he says he's almost done. I can't believe it. It's not keeping him busy for 3 hours, but he hasn't had to work around any other trains.
That helps.
We have one spot on the layout that does not have backdrops yet, and we just have to get that printed and ready to go, and then it'll be pretty much done.
All right, Ken,
Yes, sir.
what do you think?
I thought it was a great, it was well, it was good. And of course, it's something that'll only get better. So I hope we can continue to do this, because we'd like to keep the division out there in front of everybody, because it lets us know what we're doing to enhance the hobby. And the people on the bottom, of course, they can see strolling along there, notices of our Twin City Division prototype modelers meet that we've got coming up in March. And then we are hosting the Thousand Lake Region NMRA convention up in Brainerd, and that's going to be a great time. It's going to be a lot of fun up there. So the division is very, very active. You can hear from talking about how Joe is sharing work skills with other people, and as does Tom and all of us do. That's the advantage of having friends in the hobby and having a coterie of folks that will help you. I know for myself, I can't do everything well. Can't do a lot of things well, but that's okay. I can have good enthusiasm, being supportive. So that's great to have that, and I'd encourage you to get involved with your local division and make some friends and share some of this great hobby. So back to you, boys.
All right, well, let's say goodnight to everyone. And glad you guys appreciate it. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. We'll do more of these. We'll get better at it. Much better. So I thank Joe for allowing us to trample on this. We thank Ace Operator Matt for coming to show us how an operator would do. This place, Ken and I both know, is just a buzz on Operation Day. It's so much fun.
It is
so much fun. And this is all the layouts in the Twin Cities. And we have dozens, and we hope to bring them to you. And Joe will come operate them because he operates all of them. So we'll make fun of him derailing cars.
Yeah, there you go.
So
thanks, Ken and Tom. And again, thanks, Matt. Say goodnight, Gracie.
Matt says goodnight. All right, Ken.
And for folks that came in late, somebody came in late, we will put this up on the Twin City Division NMRA media page. So feel free to check back in.
Yep, it'll be on YouTube and everything else to replay. Good night, everyone. Have a great weekend.